I am reminded of the deeply touching letters, cards, and messages which so many of you have sent my wife.
It makes me think of the beautiful letters, cards, and words that many of you have sent my wife. There were rumors that King Charles sent Queen Camilla to a secret monastery, which made Buckingham Palace very upset. My family is also going through some changes right now. After a terrible scandal supposedly ruined one of the king's most important royal events, what was supposed to be a proud moment in monarchy's history turned into complete chaos, making the king feel ashamed and angry. Sources close to Charles say that the consequences were so bad that he had to move quickly and decisively. But what did Camilla really do? Today, we're going to explain the shocking truth about this royal exile. The crown shook at night. The story that made people in Windsor talk didn't start with a law or a title. There was smoke at first. There was thick, curling smoke coming from the royal study. It smelled like burned parchment and pride. Queen Camilla stood in front of the fireplace in that quiet room that was hundreds of years old. The flames on the fireplace touched her face in shades of red and gold. She had the official plan for the state banquet celebrating German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier in her hand. The event had been carefully planned by the royal family for weeks. She lit a match before the permission paper had even dried. It was too late when King Charles got there. As he watched the royal crest curl in the firelight, the heavy doors swung open. The papers were also turning to ash. He had a tight voice that was half shocked and half angry. "Just tell me what you did, Camilla." Her answer was calm but sharp. "Charles, I'm writing my place again. I'm not going to stand next to you like a quiet decoration." It was more than just resistance. That's what it said. That night there was chaos hidden in quiet. As words got passed around the hallways, staff members who were sworn to silence looked at each other with worry. The papers for the sovereign were burned by the queen. The king had taken away her power. By dawn, the palace that used to move like a military machine was moving more like a ghost. It was cautious, scared, and didn't know which way the crown would turn next. Outside, Windsor was covered in fog, as if the castle itself wanted to hide. People say that Charles spent the morning walking back and forth in his private rooms while gazing out at the grounds. The rain hit the window as he tried to think of something to say that would calm the storm without showing the fire. When the royal office finally spoke, it wasn't for long. The king would be directly in charge of making plans for the dinner. There was not a single word of Camilla. When you speak royal language, silence says a lot. Camilla was awake and sitting across the hall with her candle almost out. Some servants said she hadn't slept and had only stared into the shifting light. The shadows on her face showed that she was angry and sad at the same time. Different people saw her as strong or completely broken. I think both were true because what burned that night wasn't just paper. There wasn't much peace, but the royal wedding was still going strong. People who are close to the palace talk about what made her do such terrible things. Years of holding back, years of being politely ignored, and years of feeling like a small part of the monarchy's big story. When Camilla was queen, she was never really free of ghosts, especially the one whose picture hung in her study. Diana's calm face looked out from the frame and seemed to watch the argument. Her eyes flickered in the light as she quietly judged. Some say Charles looked at that painting while the papers were on fire, and the room stopped moving for a short time. Nothing felt the same after that night. The house went back to normal, smiles came back, and the German president was greeted with royal style. However, behind every smooth move was stress that was too deep to hide. Even though Camilla went, her name wasn't on the printed program. In official photos, her appearance was politely ignored. The crowd thought it was great. Insiders saw cracks. There were rumors that Charles had carefully limited her ability to deal with state issues, making sure that no more changes could be made. Talks also went around that Camilla was making her own small group of loyal helpers. There were people who thought her disobedience wasn't crazy, but a message. She is said to have said that a crowned woman has to choose between power and honor. "I've decided what to do." That October night, more than just paper was on fire. It was just a dream. The monarchy, which was based on calmness and silence, had shown a crack that couldn't be covered up with any ritual. Charles walked away from the fire while holding the royal seal in his shaking hands. He realized that his biggest problem wasn't dealing with people in other countries. It was a fight inside his own house. Camilla said to herself in that dim study, where ashes were still stuck to the fireplace. "I won't let anyone put out this fire." It was almost like a vow. No one knew yet whether the flame meant rebellion or ruin. But as rain hit Windsor's stone walls, one question echoed through every hallway. What makes a queen really want to set her own crown on fire? Could this storm happen inside Windsor's walls? Do more than just show royal unrest? Let's look into the secrets that made Whispers so dangerous that it could break a kingdom. The quiet rebels of Windsor. That week, Windsor was so tense that you could touch it. Something darker was moving beneath the smell of fresh flowers and the shine of clean floors. A quiet storm that no one was brave enough to name. At least not out in the open. It didn't start with anger. The big welcome for German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier and his wife was the first event. It was meant to bring the royal family together for one reason. It had been 27 years since the two countries had last met in this way, and King Charles thought it was the most important event in his rule. But what he saw as a sign of togetherness would soon turn into something much more personal. A table covered in red velvet was lit up by morning light that came in through the tall windows of the royal waiting room. There were neat stacks of papers on the ground, and the staff stood there with their pens ready. Charles spoke calmly and authoritatively, and the hall was filled with the sound of his voice. "This isn't just politeness," he said to start. He looked across the table and said, "That's the picture of Britain we're giving to Europe. William Anne, then the Princess of Wales, and finally Queen Camilla." He began to give parts. William would lead the proceedings and the first toast with his steady charm. Anne, who is always on time, would be in charge of security at the Foreign Office. Kate, who is calm, up-to-date, and loved by everyone, would handle the press and pictures. "The attention will naturally be on you," Charles added with a small smile. There was a short, tense pause before he continued. "Camilla," he said evenly, "you'll be in charge of setting up the banquet and decorating the reception room." A job that seems easy. But at that very moment it felt like an insult carved into stone. The kind of slight that someone who has worked too hard to get where they are could really feel. Even though Camilla had gloves on, her hands shook a little, but her face stayed calm. William tried not to look at her. Anne made some changes to her notes, and Kate gave her a nice nod. There was silence, but everyone could feel the sudden chill in the air. From the outside, the Queen's job might have seemed right, even elegant. But for Camilla, it showed her where she stood. For years, she had to deal with rumors, bad press, and being made fun of just to be with Charles. She had been laughed at, compared to, and sorrow by other people. Now, in this bright Windsor room, her husband had limited her to setting up chairs and flowers. The others quickly left when the meeting was over, leaving only the sound of their footsteps in the hallway. Camilla stayed where she was and stared at the piece of paper in front of her. Seeing her name at the very bottom, even below Kate's, seemed like a silent insult. She said in a low voice, "Reception room decorations." The words were full of irony. A queen in name, but not in command. By noon, Windsor was busy getting ready for the big event. As they hurried through the halls, servants carried trays of crystal glasses. Florists argued about the colors of roses. Secretaries always answered the phone. Still, Camilla stayed behind closed doors. The tea that was brought to her didn't change. In the glass, she looked calm, even royal. But her eyes told the truth. A slow, quiet anger burned under the practiced smile. It wasn't from a single attack, but from years of being looked down upon. Mrs. Hill, the person she trusted to help her, said nothing at first. Her voice was soft and almost playful as she asked, "Your Majesty, shall I confirm the seating arrangements with His Majesty?" "Don't worry about it, Mrs. Hill. Meetings are meetings, and decisions are decisions." People who knew her said it wasn't the words that were scary, but the way she said them, calm and sure, like a woman who had finally stopped waiting for approval. That night, after the staff had left Windsor's hallways, Camilla's private office lights stayed on. The sound of paper rustling, chairs moving, and names being swapped on cards that would show who was sitting where to anyone watching was replaced by the sound of this. It was a small act, even petty, but within palace walls such actions had meaning.